The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Oregon.
May I ask how much time remains?
8.5 minutes.
Oh, I won't use that much. Okay. Thank you. I yield myself such time as I may consume. I'd like to have a quote from someone who I think is quite prominent. When you go under, you go around, you go through it. What they need is more manpower and more technology. That was the acting chief of staff for the White House, Mick Mulvaney, when perhaps he was a little more independent as a member of the United States Congress. That was August 25th, 2015. I would ask what's changed since then. Well, he now works for the president. That's a change. Donald Trump, during his campaign, was real hard line on immigration, but he kept forgetting to mention immigration in some of his speeches. So his staff came up with a mnemonic. They said, well, he's a builder. If we say wall, he'll remember it. And the president did. It was just an afterthought. It was, how are we going to get him to give his hard line on immigration during his campaign speeches and get rousing going? Let's use the wall. The wall then became, a life unto its own as a campaign promise, not as something that's effective. As we've talked about before, the drugs, use a trebuchet or a catapult, use a drone, tunnels, really common tunnels, and of course, legal border crossings. So that's good. Thanks, Washington. This is an end conclusion to a campaign promise for his base, but not what's in the best interests of the United States of America in terms of preventing the shipment of illegal drugs. Now, I don't know where the gentleman came up with that new statistic that 3 times as many drugs were intercepted outside the ports of entry, unless he was using the Coast Guard, which he may have been, because the Coast Guard intercepted more drugs than every other agency of the federal government combined. Unfortunately, as the former commandant of the Coast Guard said, we can identify 80% with our intel, 80% of the drug shipments coming in on a maritime basis, but the Coast Guard only has the resources to intercept 20%. So I guess that's probably where that statistic came from. The Coast Guard's doing a great job with inadequate resources. In the bipartisan compromise, they got some additional money for air and marine assets, 3 multi-enforcement aircraft. They could use a heck of a lot more. Why don't we get that 80%? Why don't they have resources to get that 80% that they know about? And then let's get better intel and get the other 20%. And then let's scan 100% of the vehicles coming across the border. I've been at the border when, through intuition, a Border Patrol agent found drug smuggling. I just happened to be there that day. I mean, it was just sort of like, whoa, Congressman, you might like to see this. Guy drove up to the border. He had a birthday cake and a bottle of tequila on the seat. And the Border Patrol guy said, something suspicious. Take the truck over there. They scoped out the gas tank. They found big blocks of drugs in the gas tank. What was that because we had sophisticated technology and when the guy pulled the truck up, we could use that technology? No. It was the intuition of the Border Patrol agent. I said, how did you know to go and really search through that guy's vehicle? He said, well, there was nothing on his key ring. There was only one key in the ignition. He was a throwaway. The cartel was probably paying him $10,000 or something to drive that stolen or purchased pickup truck across the border concealing drugs. And the human element caught that guy. There aren't enough Border Patrol agents. They have openings. They are not adequately compensated. They weren't paid during the shutdown, but they were still working at the border. They're the first line of defense, but they also need new technology. And we can't install that technology to scan 100% of the vehicles coming through unless we invest a lot of money in improving the border crossings, because we'll have trucks backed up 100 miles back into Mexico because of the amount of commerce that comes across. So what are we going to do? We're going to build a stupid static wall over there, and we're still going to let probably 85% of the vehicles go through without applying technology. Guzman, sitting in his jail cell, is probably just chortling over this. He's saying, oh boy, are those Americans stupid. Why don't they get the technology they need to scan the cargo that we're hiding in very sophisticated ways in tractor trailers and pickup trucks and individual passenger vehicles? Why don't they intercept the drugs that are coming in through the oceans that they even know about, and they're not intercepting them? No, we're going to build a dumb wall. And by the way, when the Republicans were in charge, we had a vote on that, and it failed. If this was such a crisis and such a great idea when the Republicans controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House, why didn't they make it a priority? Well, they didn't make it a priority because they thought it was a stupid idea. But now it's a political thing. This is a victory for the president. It excites his base. It energizes his base. He has to have it, so he declares a national emergency. The emergency is political. It's not national security. It's not drugs. We have a humanitarian crisis at the border. Yes, we do. And what is a wall going to do about that? They come to the border, they stand there, and they say, we want to apply for asylum in the United States. If they come across in a remote area, they hope they come across a Border Patrol agent because they want to surrender at the moment right there and get some shelter and get medical care. They're now organizing busloads to come up from Guatemala and Honduras. We're not dealing with the root problems down there. Dealing with the smugglers who are now hiring very nice luxury buses as opposed to the old ride on that killer train that people used to take to come up from there with smugglers who would often rape them, kill them, rob them, whatever else. Now they've converted to let's put them in a luxury coach and they'll have rest stops and everything else. And this has become big business. Why aren't we doing something about that? The wall will do nothing about that. Nothing. Why are we going to waste billions of dollars on a medieval fortress that won't work? I urge my colleagues to vote and override the veto of the President of the United States, restore the integrity of the Congress of the United States, and the appropriation